Welcome to a collaborative podcast brought to you by New Cleveland Radio and Cleveland 13 News. I'm your host, Karen Hale, and I'm honored to share space with extraordinary individuals from Cleveland and beyond. Today, my guest is in Mexico. We've decided that these individuals share their purpose and their power to live out life fully while lifting others along the way. This series is about meaningful connections, mutual growth, and the beauty of learning from each other. I'm so glad you're here, so let's meet today's guest. Her name is Emma Lyons. I met Emma through podmatch.com. Always want to mention them because they've been a great supporter of our podcast. Emma helps women break up with the shame voice that's been sabotaging their power. She's not here to help you overcome self-sabotage. She's here to help you dismantle the internalized narcissist posing as your inner voice. And Emma, I understand that narcissist because probably for the first 60 years of my life, that's what I heard over and over again.
Yeah, wow. It was so really good for me to re start seeing it like that because we're taught in our culture that it's you, that it's some kind of wounded child. And we're taught to take it to therapy and send it to love. And I'm sure you know, that's the wrong thing to do with a narcissist. And this voice, the so-called inner critic, we're told that it's trying to protect us. It's absolute BS. It's protecting itself, just like the narcissist out there in the world. It's exactly the same as a narcissist. It's grandiose. It's got all these fantasies. It thinks it's special. It requires admiration. It's entitled. It doesn't exploit other people so much as it exploits you. And it has no empathy and it's got full of envy. So it ticks all the boxes of the narcissist, but the call is coming from inside the house. And we need to treat it the same way as a narcissist as we would out there in the world.
So, it's interesting because many of the women that I talk to, um, they they act like, you know, I have to hold on to this. And I did for a long time too. I really thought that if I held on to this inner voice that was constantly telling me how terrible I was, okay,
Yeah.
and I heard it. I was fat, I was ugly, I was stupid,
Oh, yeah.
I didn't deserve over and over and over again. And I kept fighting it in the wrong way because I kept taking, okay, well, I'm fat, so I'll eat another candy bar because I'm fat. I'm stupid, so I'm not going to go back to school and get the degree that I really want because I'll never achieve it.
Yeah.
And I see so many women saying the same thing to me in my coaching sessions. And I ask them, where's this voice coming from? Do you know where it started? Because if you know where it started, you
Yeah.
might be able to stop it.
And for lots of us, I mean, it has lots of different levels to it, but for lots of people who experience really heavy shame, you may have been the scapegoat within your family system. So, in dysfunctional and narcissistic families, like if you had a narcissistic family, and most families are dysfunctional, let's be real, it's particularly in the Western world, it's estimated in the United States, for example, that about 70 to 80% of families are dysfunctional. So, that's like 7 or 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
That's the vast majority. So in these kind of families, you have so much kind of collective trauma and shame that remains unprocessed that they look for a scapegoat, someone to project all of that shame, all that trauma on, and you become the identified patient. And the scapegoat, your life isn't supposed to work. So you're left, like you said, like you experienced as well, you internalize all this shame. You pit it against yourself. You're like, oh, because the parent can't be problem, it must be me. I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm stupid. I thought all the same things as you, Karen. And for so long in my life, I thought I was the problem. I didn't realize the systemic nature of this shame and the dysfunctional nature of my family. My mother ticks all the boxes of the covert narcissist, and I never realized until much later in my life. And her mother was quite a sadistic, malignant narcissist, and that's kind of downplayed by everyone except the narcissist from that particular family system. So these things get passed on. Shame is not something that can be processed, and most people, of other generations, they did no work on their shame. So it just gets passed down. It just gets passed down to the next person, and the scapegoat is the one who gets that on full blast. The other roles within dysfunctional families, like the golden child, the enabler, they're all shame roles too. But the scapegoat is the one who gets like the full on dose of shame that you kind of have to, that most of them end up in therapy or with addictions, with serious problems, because as a scapegoat, your life isn't supposed to work. You're supposed to struggle. You're supposed to be the problem for the family. So yeah, this is where it all starts for so many women. And also want to say one more thing about this. If you women have been collectively scapegoated in our society. So there's the personal element, the internalizing element, and also women collectively have been scapegoated, for the shame of men's sexuality. Oh, it's
Right.
women's fault. So all of that, women dirty, ugly, smelly, all of those things, too many wrinkles. And we shame each other. Women are the worst for pulling each other down. And this is classic shame because shame is indigestible. And in order to get a bit of relief from the shame, what do? We pull the other woman down. Oh my God, she's so fat. She's got a big nose. She's so old. And it gives us this temporary relief from the shame that we're experiencing. I love that you talked about guilt earlier on and the guilting in the guilt that was kind of passed down from your mother to your family. And usually what I've noticed is that guilt and shame are often really conflated and meshed. Like usually you don't have shame without a very large portion, maybe even a larger portion of shame than guilt, because guilt says, I've done something bad,
Right.
okay? And you feel bad because you've done something bad. Shame says, you're bad. You're a bad person. That's identity level. That is always super toxic. But we're told in our culture that shame is good for you. Even if we look at linguistically, I mean, you're shameless. You have no shame. This is an insult. So you need shame in order to be a good girl or a good boy. Or you're shameful. He's got too much shame. So shame is really and it's always a control mechanism. It's always a manipulation. But we're kind of gaslit by our culture to believe that it serves some positive function when that's a complete untruth. Shame is always toxic. It's like one step up from death in terms of vibratory frequencies, and it's not a normal emotion because it's not an emotion that we can process through. If you experience anger, you process through that, and then you experience grief. There's something underneath it.
Right.
Shame isn't like that. And this is why I have such a problem with people telling, sit down with your shame. It's very dangerous because we need to release the shame, yes. But when you tell people to sit down with shame, shame is a bottomless pit of shame. You feel the shame, there's more shame underneath that. You just get deeper in that bottomless pit, that well of shame. And it leads to a very, very dark place because shame ultimately can become super malignant. This shame voice, I call it the inner narcissist. It's that voice that tells you might as well not be here. There's no point in you being here anymore. So we need that resonance in order to take that action. I've had that voice in my head. I felt that way. And it's all because I'd been performing and arguing and trying to appease this voice all my life. And of course, all that is like you're just giving narcissistic supply to this narcissist that we've internalized.
It's interesting because even though I think I lived with all this for 60 years, um, I did find ways of looking at it in a different way. Um, and yes, my mother did did shed guilt on her three kids, um, but at the same time that she did, it was her learned behavior. And as I got older and I understood that, I could
Yeah,
decipher what she was saying and say, okay, I'm not going to take it this time, you know.
100%.
And
Yeah,
so that was healthy for me. But
yeah,
when, like I said, when I turned about 60, I realized I've been holding in all these things from being a young kid on the playground and not being asked to play, with who I thought were my friends. And so I took on that persona. I'm not good enough.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
never did ask the question because I didn't know to ask the question, why can't I play with you? Okay. And a lot of times they weren't saying I couldn't. I was reading body language and then running home and crying because they didn't want to play with me. So it took me a long time as I started journaling and eventually podcasting and then coaching to realize that some of those things I created myself or I made them worse.
100%. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
what made you decide that, hey, I've got to research this more. I've got to figure out what's going on with me and how I can help other people.
Well, I started realizing that, shame was the underlying problem. It was kind of the underlay in all this. I mean, I've been doing healing and, therapy, all this stuff for years and years. And it was kind of like I could compare it to, doing feng shui in the living room while the house is on fire. So I'd keep taking one step forward and two steps back, or feeling a bit of relief for a while and then reverting. And what it took for me was to realize the dysfunction in my family and the that my mom, ticks many or most of the or all of the boxes of the covert narcissist, and I had been kind of the scapegoat. So I realized that it wasn't me. This is systemic, and this is, like you said, this is learned behavior. My mom learned it from her mother, who was more of a malignant type of narcissist, and shame is passed down through generations. I don't believe that it's a normal emotion. I believe that it's passed down. Children, babies, they don't experience shame. They're completely shameless.
Right.
And I want to reclaim that word shameless because every other word in the English language that ends in less means that you don't have any of that thing. But when we call someone shameless, it's a slur. What we mean is they're behaving in a way that makes me feel uncomfortable. And 99.99 times out of 100, they're acting out of repressed shame. And as you know, shame is the driver of narcissism. This is what therapists have kind of uncovered because if you are completely confident and you believe in yourself and you don't get triggered when someone comes up to you and criticizes you. You don't feel the need to go after them, yeah, the way narcissists do. You're just like, okay, whatever. I believe in myself. I don't need your validation from the outside. So narcissistic behavior is very much fueled by shame. And we live in a narcissistic world. Everything is narcissistic. The governments, even the nice governments, I come from Ireland. It's a nice government. It's narcissistic. It's more covert. And then you have the more malignant types that are, doing genocide and doing all kinds of things out there in the world. This much more overt and obvious form of paranoid, malignant narcissism. But you can see it absolutely everywhere. And of course, we internalize it because the coding system for this narcissistic world is shame. And this is how you get people to shame is very good. It's used because it's very if there's a kid here and I want him to be quiet, he's bothering me, I shame him and he shuts up. No,
Yep.
no, it's very effective, but it leaves a toxic scar. And also the other thing, I might tell myself, oh, I'm shaming him to keep him a good boy. No, that's for my comfort. Shame is always about the comfort of the shamer. It's never about the person being shamed. This is a lie that we tell ourselves. Oh, I'm trying to help you. No, shame is about the comfort of the person doing the shaming. It's always a projection and it's always a power move. It's always a manipulation. Always, every time, even when people do it unconsciously. Like people manipulate others unconsciously all the time. That doesn't take away the fact that it's manipulation. And we can take back our power from that. I spoke to a woman on a podcast the other day, and she was talking about when she was a child, or it was her aunt, and she was a kind of plump child, and she was out eating ice cream with her friend. And this adult comes up to them and says, "You shouldn't be eating ice cream, you'll get fat." And very shaming, right? These girls, they could have felt shame, dropped their ice cream. They laughed in his face. So this is the power. We do not have to take on other people's shame. Shame is always a projection. Shame says there's something wrong with you, you're defective. It's always a projection from the other person, and we don't have to take it in. We only take in that shame voice. We need to have that receptor, we need to have that narcissistic voice that we've internalized with inner critic that says, yeah, you are fat, or oh my God, you've got a big nose, or whatever the BS is that's being spouted, or you better be careful, or nobody loves you. You need that resonance. And that's real shamelessness. That's why I teach people to break up with this voice and to really reclaim their shameless, because the real power move here is to become unshameable. And that means stop shaming yourself and not take any shame projections that other people throw your way, because you could only take that in with your consent, either consciously or unconsciously.
About 2 years ago, I took a course of intentionality. And in taking the course, I learned a lot of different things about myself. I've always been a pleaser, but I found out that I wasn't doing it for the right reasons. Okay. And when I was taking the course and I found that out, my first reaction was, what is wrong with me? I'm,
Mm.
you know, I turned it around that I was a bad person now for helping others. And luckily, the person who led the training said to me, you're not a bad person, but I want you to go back and think about what good you did in helping others. And when I realized that, she said, but now you get to choose who you help. But you first have to help yourself. And that's one of the things so many of us don't do because we think we're being selfish. And
Yeah.
so we do what we think everybody else wants us to do. And many of them, as you have said, are narcissists who are pulling us in their direction because we don't have enough confidence in ourselves to say, no, I don't want to go in that direction. I mean, anybody who's living in the United States right now knows what narcissist is, but yet many of us are being pulled because we can't find our own voice because we haven't been told how to do that. So, in your coaching, how do you help individuals spit it out instead of holding it deep inside?
Well, first of all, you've got to recognize that shame has no benefit. Shame is not, we're like I said before, we're taught that shame is a good behavioral regulator. And that's the kind of party line in our culture, because that's been pushed by religion, by all kind of hierarchies, because it's effective in the moment. It looks good, it works immediately. So this is how we've been manipulated and controlled through shame. And let's be real, this is how we all do it. We all use shame. If somebody's bothering us, you shame them because it's kind of automatic. So you don't need to be a narcissist to do this. This is because shame is so normalized in our culture,
Okay.
particularly in Western cultures. So that's the first thing. Really recognize that shame is useless. It doesn't serve any purpose. It's not like anger, right? Anger means somebody's crossed my boundary. I need to say no here. It's not like fear. There's something dangerous here. I need to go the opposite direction. I need to get out of this situation. So all of these negative emotions, even guilt, you can say, recognize I've done something bad, right? So that could be, you could definitely argue that guilt can be positive. But shame, it's not even to say that it's this belief that I'm not enough is even downstream from what shame really is. Because shame is a toxic emotional cocktail of a bunch of different things: self-loathing, disgust, fear, anger, turned inwards, turned against the self, like invisibility, you want to disappear. It's that heat that comes over you. So shame is not, and then all the belief that I'm bad, I'm wrong, it's downstream from that. So shame is a little more complex than other emotions in that sense, and it serves no purpose except to be control the person trying to control you. It doesn't benefit you in any way. Believing that you're useless or that you're stupid, how is that beneficial? It's only beneficial to people trying to make you do what they want you to do. So when you recognize this, that shame has no positive function, that it's actually not good at regulating behavior. Like that's been proven. And this is the thing. Like even Brene Brown says that shame, if you don't experience any shame, that would make you a psychopath. And I totally disagree with that perspective because most people, when they're behaving badly, they're acting out of repressed shame. And we don't need shame to recognize that we've done something wrong. Maybe we need guilt, but really more than that, we need empathy. And guess what? Shame shuts down our ability to empathize because it makes us focus on ourselves. It makes us contract. It makes us get defensive. Like if you look at people in cults or, cult-like political ideologies, if you criticize their cult or their ideology, it's a personal attack. They feel shamed and they fight you. They physically fight you. They can get violent because they feel like you're attacking them. It's like they feel like they're personally being attacked, even though you're just attacking an idea, or even though you're just critiquing an idea. So this is what shame does to you. It doesn't make you more amenable to change. It may, in the moment, stop you from doing a thing, but in the medium to long term, it's very, very poor regulator of behavior. If we look at the prison system, you see the same thing played out there again. It's very shaming. You are bad. You have done this. You're bad. It's very shaming. What do does how is our people go out of jail and they commit the crimes again and again. It's not effective at changing people's behavior. Shame is ineffective at changing your behavior. When you use it against yourself, it's not a good way to change your behavior. It might work one time, but it's toxic.
Yeah.
So that's important. You've got to recognize that. And really, really see that. Recognize shame when it comes up and recognize that it's not your friend. That it's not good. It's not going to help you become a better person. It makes you become a worse person because you become defensive, you become insular, you become defensive, you can't take criticism, you start attacking other people because you feel attacked. So recognize that shame is super toxic. That's the first thing. And then I have an acronym. It's called break. So B is the first one. So when shame kind of starts to hijack your body, and it hijacks you like no other emotion. Only fear is a bit similar, but shame is just so much more visceral. So really break the trance. Start recognize this isn't your voice, that it's a spell. It's a trance that we're all under. And you catch it, you interrupt it. Don't overthink, just name it. This is a trance. And that automatically disrupts the loop. Okay, so then you go on to R, which is refuse to engage. And this is just drop the rope because we're taught to deal one way with narcissists out there in the world, but this inner narcissistic voice, this inner critic, Dr. Ramani, who's the expert on narcissists, she talks about deep, and we've got to do the same thing with this narcissistic voice. Don't defend, don't engage, don't explain, and don't personalize. Don't fight it because that just gives it more fuel, more
You're
narcissistic supply, more energy. It's like a parasite, that's how I see it. It's a parasite, it extracts all its energy from you, just like the narcissists out there in the world. They need the narcissistic supply. So you just say, not today. You don't owe it any courtesy. You could even say, not today. You don't need to coddle that thing. And this is my kind of problem with the conventional wisdom. We're taught to coddle that voice or that energy. Then go on to E, which is expose the lie. So really call out the shame-based programming. What is it like? It says you're stupid, you're ugly. This is control. It's not factually true. It's not empirical truth. And it's not your story. This is kind of inherited shame that's been impressed on you. And start speaking that truth really disarms its power. Then you go on to A, which is anchor it in your body, anchor it in truth. So shame, it hijacks you like nothing else, like I said. So you want to come back to your body, feel your breath, plant your feet, say your name and the year, and really remind your nervous system, I'm safe, I'm sovereign, and I'm here. And then finally, K is kick it out. Like you can physically shake it out, stomp it out, say out loud, this isn't mine. And that really diffuses it. I mean, I've done it myself and I've taught people to do it. This is really effective. But the important thing is to recognize that shame is not useful. It's not your friend. It's not your enabler. It's not your guardian. In spite of what we're told by the collective, we're told that this inner critic, it just wants to keep you safe. No, it wants to keep itself safe. It doesn't care about you, it wants to keep you small, shrink in your little box. And once you start seeing behind the curtain, you can absolutely take back your power because this thing is like a light bulb. It gets all its power, all its energy from you, and you can shut off that power. We've got to stop coddling this thing and just say no to it and stop giving away our power and our energy.
It's interesting because um, my husband, we've been together, well, we've been married 41 years, been together 43. And when I would make those negative comments about myself, he would always stop me and say, who told you you're ugly? Who told you you're fat? Who told you you're stupid? Um, and he did not like when I put myself down, but I continued to do it for a long time. And
Mm-hmm.
when I finally heard his voice after almost 30 years of being together, it was like, he's right. Who told me that? You know, why do I continue to say these negative things about myself? I don't hear anybody else saying them. It's
Yeah,
me. And
yeah,
that's when I got the strength to actually dissolve it and say, I'm not going to say I'm fat unless I really am and I don't like the way I look. But then I have to make the decision what I want to do about it. Do I want to stay this way or do I want to make changes? And that was a powerful breakthrough for me. And it didn't come from therapy because all the therapy I had kept asking me, oh, did your mother call you fat? Did your brothers call you stupid? Trying to make them my enemy. And they truly weren't, because the more I thought about it in therapy, they weren't the ones saying it. It was my own visual, my own thought process, because I was comparing myself against other people. You know, I may be
yeah.
standing next to you and thinking, oh, compared to you, I feel like I weigh 100 pounds more. And
Mm.
based on that, in my head, I'm fat. And being fat made me feel ugly. And making me feel ugly made me feel stupid. And it was,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And were you the scapegoat within your family system? Because often, like I mentioned before, when you're the scapegoat, it's not always overt. It can be quite energetic in terms of this shame kind of gets dumped on one person. It's often the most sensitive person in the family system. They become kind of the depository for all of this collective shame. So what happens then in that situation, even if the parents aren't saying all the time, you're fat, you're ugly, it's kind of in the air. And the child who's in the scapegoat role, what you do is a kind of I must be the problem here. So I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm stupid. You create all these ideas within yourself because I had all the same thing. I thought I was like, where did these come from? But it was a reaction to my environment. So it's not children out there in the world in healthy families don't develop these ideas about themselves. This comes from the dysfunctional environment that we're in.
Well, it's interesting. I'm the youngest of three. I have two older brothers. And I always felt less than them. I don't know if my family made me feel that way or not. One
Mhm.
brother is 8 years older, was 4 years older, and to me, they were just the world, and they still are. But I look at them differently than I did growing up. Okay, when I was growing up, I thought they were so much better, but now I realize we are equals. They're no better than me. Um, but the shame I felt all those years was very intense. And I'm
Yeah.
so glad. And I want people to understand that you don't have to live with it that deeply
No.
the rest of your life. And it's not an easy process because I will say, when I started going through this process 15 years ago, I kept asking myself, do I deserve to do this? But the answer in the back of my head was, yes, you do. Yes, you do. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to shed some of this stuff. You need to be able to look in the mirror and not see what you thought was this ugly vision. You need to stop badgering yourself about your weight. You need to stop saying that you're not smart enough. And actually, my first step was to go back to school to get my master's degree. And I was so ecstatic because I was excelling with every class I took. And that confirmed to me I wasn't stupid. However, I didn't like school when I was younger. So I didn't do as well as I was doing now. And there was a difference. I could see it. It's like, okay, now I understand.
Yeah.
So, how can my listeners find you, learn more about you? Um, because you have so many different techniques that you use that it's much different than just a life coach like myself.
Yeah, well, I help people to kind of release the emotions that are keeping them stuck. And I'm special. I suppose I've been writing and focusing a lot on shame, and also what I've identified as one of the enforcers of shame, which is scarcity, because shame says you're not enough, and scarcity kind of enforces that smallness. So we've got to dismantle both of them. And yeah, you can find me. I've done a lot of my writing over on Substack. So over there, I'm Trauma Matrix, and you can find me on Instagram and all the social platforms. Trauma.matrix over on Instagram, over on LinkedIn as well. You can find me, and I do have a free gift for people. So if people are listening and they're thinking, yeah, I kind of identify with this critical voice. I have a free gift and it's called 5 Signs It's Time to Break Up with Your Inner Narcissist. And it gives you the 5 classic signs that it's really kind of gone too far and that you need to take back your power from this thing. And it also gives you tools and strategies to make that happen. And you can find that at tinyurl.com/ not today narc NARC. So yeah, check that out if you're that's kind of a next step. Because listening to all this information, it's all very interesting, but we know that you need to act on these things to bring that tangible change into your life.
Absolutely. And that's a good word to use. We need to act on it. Um, we can sit around and complain. We can sit around and think that we want to make a change, but until you act on it, change is not going to happen. And, you know, I look at myself and I say, you can do it at any age. You can do it at any time. And then be
Yes.
grateful that your life is yours and that you have some control. Emma, thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the day in Mexico, where I'm sure it's warmer than it is in Northeast Ohio. We just got fall today, and it's in the low 60s, and I'm wearing a sweatshirt because I'm feeling cold. So um, have a beautiful day, and we will talk again soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye now.
Bye.